April 10 to 12, 1940. The operational timeline for Group 1 is now fractured. Hipper reaches Trondheim but cannot participate in subsequent fleet actions. The landings proceed on schedule, German infantry secure the port facilities and begin moving inland, but naval gunfire support is reduced. German planning had assumed all heavy units would be available for follow-on operations. The loss of one cruiser to combat damage creates a gap that cannot be filled from reserves. Replacement units are committed from the Baltic, delaying other operations. The effect cascades. Schedules slip, escort formations are reorganized, and fuel allocation must be recalculated. The strategic impact extends beyond the immediate battle space. Hipper's damage forces German Naval Command to reassess risk calculations for the remainder of Operation Weserübung. The assumption that weather would prevent significant British surface interference has proven incorrect. A single destroyer, detached from its formation and operating independently, has demonstrated that small units can impose disproportionate costs on major fleet units under the right conditions. The German response is to increase escort densities for subsequent landing groups and to route troop transports farther from known British patrol areas, adding 12 to 18 hours to transit times. British signal intelligence, operating from intercept stations in Scotland and the Orkney Islands, notes an increase in German naval radio traffic following April 8. The content is encrypted and cannot be read in real time, but the volume and pattern suggest disruption to planned operations. Traffic analysis indicates that units originally assigned to northern Norway are being redirected. Timing markers in message headers show delays. The intelligence officers cannot determine the cause but note the correlation with Glowworm's last known position and the cessation of her transmissions. The deduction is cautious but correct. Something has happened in the Norwegian Sea that has forced the Kriegsmarine to adjust its operational tempo. In London, the loss of Glowworm is reported as missing, presumed sunk, based on failure to return to station and the cessation of wireless traffic. Details are absent. No British ships were close enough to witness the engagement. No reconnaissance aircraft observed the area. Weather has prevented aerial search. The Admiralty loss ledger is updated with minimal notation. 1 G-class destroyer, date and position approximate, cause unknown, presumed enemy action. The families of the crew are notified according to standard procedure. Missing in action, further information to follow when available. For most, no further information will arrive until after the war's end. German Naval Headquarters in Berlin receives Heye's full after-action report on April 11th. The document is filed according to standard procedure. Engagement summaries are retained for tactical analysis. Damage reports are forwarded to shipyard planning, and commendations are noted in personnel records. The paragraph concerning the British captain's conduct is unusual enough to be flagged by staff officers. The recommendation is forwarded but takes no immediate action. Germany and Britain are at war, and formal recognition of enemy valor is not a priority for either propaganda or morale purposes. The report is classified and archived. It will remain in German files for 5 years. The financial ledger tells a different story. Repair estimates for Hipper are calculated in Reichsmarks and man-hours. 42,000 man-hours, 16,000 meters of welded plate, 600 tons of structural steel, and an estimated completion date of May 5, 1940. For 26 days, a modern heavy cruiser displacing 14,000 tons and representing an investment of 80 million Reichsmarks is unavailable for operations. The German naval order of battle, already thin compared to the Royal Navy, is reduced by 1 fleet unit at the beginning of a campaign where every major surface ship is required. The economics are stark. Britain has lost a destroyer that cost £300,000 to build and requires 6 months to replace. Germany has suffered damage to a cruiser that costs more than repairs can quantify. It costs operational availability at the moment when availability determines strategic outcomes. Glowworm, displacing 1,345 tons and costing the British Treasury approximately £300,000, has imposed a disproportionate cost on the enemy. The ratio is stark. Less than 10% of Hipper's displacement inflicted enough damage to remove HMS Glowworm. 16 minutes that changed a campaign. April 8, 1940. The Norwegian Sea, 200 miles off Trondheim. A British destroyer cuts through 30-foot swells under low cloud and driving snow. On her bridge, Lieutenant Commander Gerard Roope reads position reports and weather forecasts that promise no improvement. Behind him, 145 men work pumps, tend boilers, and watch horizons that reveal nothing beyond gray water and white spray. In London and Berlin, staff officers move pins across maps, confident their plans account for weather, distance, and enemy capability. They do not account for a man overboard, a boiler fault, or the collision geometry of steel meeting steel at 20 knots. Within hours, doctrine will give way to desperation, and a detached escort will become the hinge on which an invasion timetable turns. This is the story of how 16 minutes of action, documented by both sides, entered the permanent record of naval warfare. Gapa Flow, April 3, 1940. On the heavy wooden table in the Admiralty planning room lies Directive Wilfred, a mining operation designed to close Norwegian coastal channels to German or traffic. The iron that feeds Ruhr steel mills travels south from Narvik aboard Swedish freighters, hugging neutral waters where British interception remains politically constrained. The directive allocates thousands of Mark 14 mines, escort roles to the 2nd Destroyer Flotilla, and distant cover from the battlecruiser Renown. Among the assigned escorts is HMS Glowworm, a G-class destroyer launched at Camel Laird in 1935. Her specification sheet lists a standard displacement of 1,345 tons, 4 4.7-inch quick-firing Mark 9 guns in single mounts, 2 quintuple 21-inch torpedo tubes, and light anti-aircraft armament. Her wartime complement numbers 145 officers and ratings. Her designed maximum speed under trial conditions reaches 36 knots. Her intended role this week is screening and escort, not independent surface action. British intelligence assessments filed in early April carry a conservative tone. German reaction to the mining operation is expected, but Admiralty planning assumes a delayed response constrained by weather and the need to coordinate surface forces across long distances. Reconnaissance flights are already reduced. North Sea conditions have grounded patrol aircraft for 3 of the past 5 days. The probability estimate for immediate surface contact in the target area is rated low. Weather forecasts predict continued deterioration. Gale force winds, heavy seas, visibility below 2 miles, and frequent snow squalls. Under such conditions, fleet movements become exercises in navigation and seamanship, not high-speed interception. What British staff officers do not see is Weserübung, the German operational plan for simultaneous landings along the entire Norwegian coast. The plan's audacity lies in its synchronization. Troop transports and covering forces must arrive at dawn on April 9th at 6 widely separated objectives, from Narvik in the north to Kristiansand in the south. Timing is absolute. Delays measured in hours can unravel the entire scheme. To meet the deadline, the Kriegsmarine commits its most modern heavy units, accepting risks that peacetime doctrine would prohibit. Among these units is the heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper, displacing 14,000 tons at full load, mounting 8 203mm guns in 4 twin turrets, protected by an 80mm belt and 50mm deck armor, and capable of 32 knots. Her assignment under Weserübung is Group 1, landing German infantry and mountain troops at Trondheim, Norway's 3rd largest city and a strategic anchor for central Norway. Escorting Hipper are 2 destroyers, Z-11 Bernd von Arnim and Z-18 Hans Ludi. The force commander is Captain Zur See Helmuth Heye. His sailing orders specify strict radio silence, minimal smoke, and arrival at dawn on the 9th. The operation allows no margin for diversion or delay. On April 6th, 2 separate naval operations, one British, one German, began moving toward the same latitude. Neither side is aware of the other's presence. The weather writes the first line of the engagement. Visibility dropping, seas building, and forecast models predicting no improvement for 72 hours. North Sea, April 6th, 1100 hours. A green sea breaks over Glowworm's bow and surges aft across the forward gun deck. Lookouts brace against stanchions. Spray reaches the bridge 20 feet above the waterline. On the port quarter, the rest of the flotilla maintains station in line ahead, gray hulls appearing and disappearing in the trough of each swell. Then a shout from amidships. man overboard. An able seaman, swept from his footing by a wave larger than the rest, is visible for seconds in the white water astern before the next swell rolls through. Lieutenant Commander Roope orders the wheel hard over. Glowworm turns into the wind, engines reversing, the turn exposing her beam to the sea. The ship rolls 30 degrees, holds, then comes upright as the bow meets the next wave head-on. Lifelines are thrown. A rescue party moves aft. The evolution consumes 16 minutes. The man is recovered alive and is logged in the ship's journal with time, position, and condition. The maneuver is textbook seamanship, executed without hesitation. It is also a fork in the operational timeline. Glowworm has lost its station with renown. Fuel consumption during the turn and recovery has increased. Salt spray has contaminated the feed water in number 2 boiler, reducing available steam pressure. Maximum sustainable speed drops to approximately 25 knots. Wireless communication, degraded by icing on the aerial and atmospheric disturbance, becomes intermittent. Roope evaluates his options according to standing doctrine. Rejoin the main force when weather permits, maintain patrol pattern in the assigned sector, and report position at the next scheduled transmission window. The decision is conservative and correct by the standards of 1940 destroyer operations. What it does not account for is that Glowworm's new patrol track, adjusted for wind and sea state, now overlaps the approach route of a German heavy cruiser under radio silence. In the ship's engineering log, the entry for April 6th records the boiler contamination, the reduced steam pressure, and the estimated time required for flushing and restoration. The notation is brief and technical, written by an officer who cannot know that the reduction in speed will place his ship in a specific quadrant of ocean at a specific hour 2 days hence. Seamanship and chance intersect. The destroyer that saved 1 man has begun a trajectory that will cost 107. Cuxhaven to Trondheim approaches. April 7th to 8th, 1940. The Admiral Hipper group advances north through worsening weather. Kriegsmarine entries, war diary logs maintained by German naval procedure, record the following. Heavy swell from the northwest, frequent snow squalls reducing visibility to under 1 mile, speed maintained in the mid-20 knot range, and strict emissions control in effect. Troops are quartered below. Seasickness is reported as widespread, but does not affect operational readiness. The deadline remains fixed. Trondheim landings at first light, April 9th. Fleet headquarters in Wilhelmshaven has made clear that delays are unacceptable. Norway's neutrality will end at dawn whether Group 1 is in position or not. Captain Heye's assessment, recorded in his post-action report, reflects confidence tempered by caution. British surface forces are known to be operating in the area, but intelligence estimates suggest they are concentrated farther south, near the Skagerrak approaches. Aerial reconnaissance from the Royal Air Force has been absent for 3 days. German signals intelligence has intercepted no transmission indicating British awareness of Weserübung. The weather, though punishing to ships and men, provides concealment more effective than any smokescreen. Heye judges that his greatest risk lies not in interception but in navigational error or mechanical failure under sustained high-speed steaming in heavy seas. On the bridge of Hipper, watch officers plot dead reckoning positions every 2 hours. Celestial navigation is impossible. Cloud cover is total. Radio direction finding is employed cautiously, balancing the need for position updates against the risk of revealing the group's presence. The 2 escorting destroyers, smaller and more affected by the sea state, station themselves ahead and to starboard, their lookouts scanning for ice, debris, or least expected enemy contact. By the early hours of April 8th, Group 1 was approximately 180 miles west of Trondheim, maintaining course and speed. British Admiralty intelligence, working from fragmentary Norwegian coastal reports and the absence of German fleet units in home waters, has begun to suspect German intentions but has not yet correlated specific force movements with specific objectives. The warning order sent to British forces in the North Sea on April 7th mentions possible German activity but provides no tactical detail. Glowworm, operating independently after her separation, receives the transmission but the text is garbled by atmospheric conditions. Roope logs the receipt and continues his patrol. Two commanders, both executing their orders, both blind to each other by weather and by doctrine, are now within 50 miles. The geometry of interception is nearly complete. Norwegian Sea, April 8, 1940, 0800 hours. On Glowworm's bridge, the forward lookout calls out a contact fine on the starboard bow. Range estimated at 8,000 yards. Target obscured by snow squall but intermittently visible. A destroyer-sized hull, course northwest. Roope orders speed increased to 26 knots, the maximum his damaged boiler plant can sustain, and alters course to close. Standard procedure: identify, challenge, engage if hostile. At this range and in these conditions, nationality cannot be confirmed by silhouette alone. The assumption is reconnaissance. A German picket withdrawing toward its main force. 3 minutes pass. Range closes to 6,000 yards. The target emerges briefly from the squall. The profile is wrong for British tonnage. Single stack, low freeboard, gun positions that do not match Royal Navy configuration. Roope orders the gun director to track and stand by. Before Glowworm can transmit or fire, the German destroyer opens first. 3 salvos in rapid succession. 2 fall short. 1 straddles, and shell splinters strike Glowworm's forward superstructure. The impact is not disabling but confirms hostile intent. Roope orders return fire and increase to flank speed. The German destroyer lays smoke and turns away, maintaining a speed slightly greater than Glowworm can match. Roope interprets the maneuver as classic screening behavior, a picket drawing an enemy pursuer away from its principal while simultaneously alerting that principal to the threat. It is a textbook response, and Roope's decision to pursue is equally textbook. Press the contact, attempt to inflict damage, and gather intelligence on enemy strength and disposition. What he cannot see through the smoke and snow is that the German destroyer is not alone, and that it is not withdrawing, it is leading. In the Kriegsmarine of the 11 Bernd von Arnim, the engagement is logged at 0805 hours. Contact with British destroyer, return fire, smoke laid, course altered to draw pursuer toward Hipper. The destroyer's captain follows doctrine precisely. His orders are to screen, not to engage independently. He has identified the threat, returned fire to establish hostile action, and is now executing the second half of his mission. Bring the enemy to the guns of the fleet unit. The maneuver is working. Glowworm follows. Norwegian Sea, April 8, 0830 hours. The horizon opens. Through a break in the snow, a large hull appears fine on Glowworm's bow, range 4,000 yards and closing. The silhouette is unmistakable. A heavy cruiser, twin funnels, main battery trained to port. For 3 seconds, Roope's tactical situation transforms from pursuit of a single destroyer to engagement with a fleet unit displacing 10 times his own tonnage and mounting guns that can penetrate his hull at any angle. From Hipper's fire control station, the British destroyer is acquired at 0832. A ranging salvo is fired. 8-inch shells, high explosive, time of flight 7 seconds. The fall of shot is observed short. Corrections are applied. The second salvo straddles. Splinters and blast effects strike Glowworm aft, damaging wireless aerials and wounding 3 men. Roope orders smoke and turns hard to starboard, putting his stern toward the cruiser and his own smoke between himself and the enemy's optics. Doctrine at this point offers a clear choice: withdraw under smoke, report contact, and evade. Glowworm is faster in calm water, but in this sea state, speed is limited by hull stress and the risk of damage from wave impact. The cruiser, larger and heavier, is less affected by the seas. Turning away exposes Glowworm's stern and reduces her ability to return fire. Roope weighs the factors in seconds. Withdrawal is tactically sound but operationally uncertain. The enemy is already in gun range. Smoke will not last. The sea state punishes high-speed turns. The alternative is to close the range, mask himself in his own smoke, and attempt a torpedo attack from inside the belt where the cruiser's armor schemes offer less protection against underwater detonation. Glowworm's last clear wireless transmission is logged at 0835 hours. Enemy cruiser sighted. Engaging, the message reaches no British unit with the power to intervene. Renown is 200 miles south. The weather prevents air support. No other surface forces are within 6 hours steaming. Roope's ship is alone. The decision is made. Glowworm turns into the smoke, increases speed, and begins her approach. On Hipper's bridge, the British destroyer is briefly lost to observation. German range clocks hold the last known bearing. Gun crews stand by. The disparity is documented in the technical files of both navies. Hipper mounts 8 203mm guns in 4 twin turrets, each capable of firing 4 rounds per minute to a maximum range of 31,000 meters. The armor-piercing shell weighs 122 kilograms and can penetrate 150 millimeters of vertical armor at 15,000 meters. The ship's belt armor, 80 millimeters of cemented plate over 40 millimeters of backing, is designed to defeat 6-inch gunfire at battle ranges. Deck armor, 50 millimeters over machinery spaces, provides overhead protection against plunging fire. Glowworm mounts 4 4.7-inch guns, each capable of 12 rounds per minute to a maximum range of 16,000 meters. The high-explosive shell weighs 22 kilograms. Against heavy armor, penetration is negligible. The destroyer's maximum protection, half-inch plating over the bridge and director, is symbolic, not functional. A single hit from Hipper's main battery anywhere on the hull can mission-kill the smaller ship. Weather alters these calculations. Hipper's fire control optics, mounted high to extend horizon range, are now whipped by spray and obscured by snow. The stable fire control platform assumed by gunnery tables does not exist. The ship rolls 8 to 12 degrees with each swell, and the mean point of impact shifts accordingly. Muzzle blast interacts with wind, creating smoke that drifts back across the director position. Range clocks, calibrated for clear conditions, struggle with a target intermittently visible and constantly maneuvering. For Glowworm, the same conditions compress engagement ranges and reduce the cruiser's advantage. At 2,000 yards, a 4.7-inch shell can damage upperworks, ignite ready ammunition, and disable fire control systems. The destroyer's 12 rounds per minute cycle, 3 times Hipper's rate, becomes relevant only if she survives long enough to establish a firing pattern. The torpedo, however, remains the equalizer. A 21-inch Mark 9 torpedo carries 750 pounds of TNT and travels at 35 knots to a range of 10,000 yards. One hit below the waterline can flood machinery spaces and reduce the cruiser's speed to the point where Glowworm can dictate range and bearing. German observers log hits on Glowworm at 0840. The forward gun shield is struck. Casualties are reported. Bridge fittings are damaged. Roope transfers fire control authority aft and keeps his bow pointed toward the enemy to minimize target profile. The destroyer is hurt but still closing. The tactical situation at 0843 hours is documented in both naval records. Glowworm is inside 3,000 yards, maneuvering through her own smoke screen, taking main battery hits at irregular intervals. Her forward gun mount is damaged but not disabled. Number 1 boiler is operating at 70% capacity. Number 2 boiler is contaminated and contributes minimal steam. Speed is holding at 22 knots, but fuel consumption is running 30% above normal. The ship has been under fire for 13 minutes. Casualties are mounting. 4 dead, 7 wounded, and the sick bay reports limited capacity for additional treatment. On Hipper's bridge, fire control officers are recalculating solutions every 30 seconds. The target is intermittently visible, closing through smoke and spray, changing course unpredictably. German gunnery doctrine, built around long-range precision fire against armored targets, is not optimized for this scenario. The cruiser's main battery can reload and fire every 15 seconds, but acquiring a stable firing solution on a small, fast, maneuvering target in a gale requires time that the tactical situation does not provide. Hits are scored, splinters, blast effects, structural damage, but none achieve the immediate mission kill that would end the engagement. The destroyer's gun crews continue to return fire when the target is visible. 4.7-inch shells strike Hipper's upperworks, damaging fire control wiring, ventilation intakes, and boat davits. The cumulative effect is minor compared to the structural protection provided by the cruiser's armor, but it degrades systems and creates uncertainty. Smoke from small fires drifts across German observation positions. Ammunition handlers work in conditions that were not anticipated in peacetime drills. Heavy roll, water on deck, visibility obscured by their own muzzle blast. Roope's calculation at this point is documented in survivor testimony collected after the war. The torpedo attack offers the only realistic chance of mission success. Withdrawal is theoretically possible but operationally doubtful. The enemy has the speed advantage in these seas, the range is already short, and turning away exposes the destroyer's stern to plunging fire. The decision is made within seconds, without consultation, based on 20 years of naval experience and 13 minutes of combat. Close further. Mask the approach. Launch torpedoes at minimum effective range. If the torpedoes fail, ram. 0845 hours. Orders pass aft to the torpedo control station. Stand by starboard tubes. Glowworm emerges from her smoke at 1700 yards. Bow on. Speed 24 knots. The torpedo officer calculates deflection, range, and target speed by eye and stopwatch. 5 torpedoes are launched in a spread pattern, each set to run at a depth of 10 feet. The launch is observed from Hipper. White wakes are visible crossing ahead of the cruiser's bow. Heye orders hard left rudder. The cruiser turns, expending her momentum to avoid the spread. The maneuver is successful. No impacts are recorded. The return fire is immediate and punishing. Hipper's main battery, now with a stable solution on a target briefly silhouetted against its own torpedo wakes, fires 4 salvos in 90 seconds. Shells strike Glowworm's forward boiler room. The hit ruptures steam lines. Pressure drops instantly. Men in the engineering spaces are scalded by superheated vapor. Ventilator uptakes belch flame and black smoke. The ship's speed begins to fall. 24 knots becomes 20, then 18. The engineering officer reports fires forward and flooding aft. Pumps are losing the fight against inrushing seawater. Below decks, the damage control parties work in conditions that resemble industrial accidents more than naval combat. Steam at 300 pounds per square inch has vented into enclosed spaces. Paint ignites on bulkheads. Electrical cables short and spark. Water rises through deck gratings as the hull takes on tons of seawater with each new hit. The sick bay, located amidships, receives casualties faster than the medical staff can triage them. Burns, blast injuries, and fragmentation wounds are treated with morphine, pressure bandages, and improvised splints. The ship's doctor, a surgeon lieutenant with 2 years of peacetime service, works without pause as the deck tilts beneath him. Roope remains on the bridge, now exposed to wind and spray after the bridge windows are blown out by blast overpressure. Salt water stings his eyes. Wind tears at his uniform. The voice pipes connecting the bridge to the engine room and steering compartment are still functional, though communications are degraded by ambient noise and the ringing in ears subjected to repeated concussions. He evaluates his remaining options. 2 torpedoes are left, both in the port tubes. The range is now under 1,000 yards. The cruiser is maneuvering, but in these seas her turn rate is constrained. The destroyer is slowing, but she is still answering to helm and throttle. Doctrine is silent on this scenario. There is no textbook answer for a crippled destroyer engaging a heavy cruiser at knife range in a gale. The calculations are brutal and simple. A second torpedo attack requires turning to port to bring the remaining tubes to bear. The turn will expose Glowworm's beam to Hipper's guns. At this range, a broadside hit will likely penetrate to the machinery spaces and end the engagement immediately. The probability of a torpedo hit at under 1,000 yards in heavy seas is estimated at less than 30% even under ideal conditions, and these conditions are far from ideal. The alternative is to maintain heading, keep the bow toward the enemy, and close to ramming distance. The destroyer's reinforced bow, built to withstand North Atlantic wave impacts, becomes the last weapon available. In Hipper's log, the entry at 0850 reads, "Enemy destroyer persists in closing through smoke. Main battery continues to engage German gunners, trained for long-range engagements against armored targets, are now firing at a small, fast, erratically maneuvering ship inside the minimum range for which their fire control computers are optimized. Hits are scored, but none stops the British ship's advance. The second torpedo attack is anticipated. Gun crews stand ready to shift fire as soon as the enemy's bearing steadies. But the torpedoes never come. Glowworm turns directly toward Hipper's bow, engines straining. 0920 hours. Glowworm breaks from her own smoke at extreme short range, bow pointed at Hipper's starboard side forward of the bridge. Roope orders full ahead, though full is now a relative term. The damaged boilers can give only 15 knots. It is enough. The geometry of the engagement is simple. Two ships on converging courses, closing speed 30 knots, time to impact 20 seconds. From Hipper's bridge, the destroyer's intention is unmistakable. Heye orders full astern and hard left rudder, attempting to swing the cruiser's armored belt toward the impact point. The maneuver begins, but 14,000 tons cannot turn in time. German sailors on the upper deck watch the British destroyer close the final 100 yards. Some accounts report men waving, attempting to warn off an attack they recognize as suicidal. Others describe the destroyer wreathed in smoke and steam, her bow already damaged, advancing at an angle that makes the outcome inevitable. Glowworm's bow, reinforced for North Atlantic service, strikes Hipper's starboard side aft of the forward turret and ahead of the bridge. The sound, reported by survivors from both ships, is described as a tearing concussion. Steel parting, frames buckling, rivets shearing. The impact lasts 3 seconds. The physics are straightforward. 1,345 tons at 15 knots delivers approximately 200,000 kilogram-meters of kinetic energy, concentrated on a contact area measured in square meters. No armor scheme is designed to resist localized impact loads delivered perpendicular to the plating. The collision effect resembles an industrial press. Metal deforms, welds fail, and structural members exceed their elastic limits and fracture. On Hipper, the collision opens a 14-meter gash in the starboard side plating. The tear extends below the waterline into compartments adjacent to the forward engine room. Flooding is immediate. Watertight integrity is compromised across 2 bulkhead sections. The cruiser takes a 3-degree list to starboard and speed drops to 12 knots. Damage control parties are dispatched. Pumps are started. The engineering officer reports flooding under control but not stopped. Heye orders engines stopped and the ship steadied for assessment. The troop compartments below, packed with infantry intended for the Trondheim landings, are evacuated as a precaution. Water rises in passageways. Emergency lighting switches on. Pumps labor against the inflow. On Glowworm, the impact collapses the forward structure inward. The bow crumples back to the break of the forecastle. The sudden deceleration throws unsecured men forward. Equipment tears loose from mountings. The forward gun crew is killed instantly by the structural collapse. The destroyer takes an immediate list to port. Internal explosions, depth charges detonating under the pressure of flooding or secondary ammunition fires, accelerate the capsize. The ship rolls to port, 30 degrees, then 60, then past the point of recovery. Men trapped below decks have no time to reach escape hatches. Those on the upper deck are thrown into the sea as the hull inverts. She sinks stern first. Time from impact to disappearance. 90 seconds. The sea closes over the hull. Debris, oil, and men surface in the swell. From Hipper, lookouts count heads in the water. 38 men are visible. Heye orders boats lowered and rescue operations begun. The sea state makes every approach hazardous. Nets are dropped. Lines are thrown. The work continues for 40 minutes. 0945 to 11:15 hours. Rescue boats from Hipper work through the debris field. The sea temperature is 4 degrees Celsius. Survival time for an unprotected man is estimated at 12 minutes. Those still alive when reached are pulled aboard with difficulty. Oil makes hands slippery, and the swell lifts and drops the boats 6 feet with each wave. German sailors throw lines, haul men over gunwales, and strip away soaked clothing. 38 British ratings and 1 officer are recovered alive. 107 men go down with the ship or die in the water before rescue. The rescue operation itself is documented in multiple German accounts. Motor launches and whalers are lowered from Hipper despite the sea state. Each approach to a survivor in the water requires careful handling. Too fast and the boat risks striking the man. Too slow, and the drift carries both boat and survivor apart. German sailors work without life jackets themselves. Standard procedure is to keep them available for rescued personnel. Lines with loops are thrown. Survivors too weak to grasp are hooked under the arms and hauled bodily into the boats. Oil from Glowworm's ruptured fuel tanks coats the surface, making every surface slippery and every handhold uncertain. Several survivors later describe seeing Lieutenant Commander Roope in the water. He is reported as swimming toward a rescue boat, calling out to his men to take hold of the lines first. Witnesses state that he appeared exhausted, possibly injured, and was struggling against the cold and the sea state. Before a line can reach him, he slips beneath the surface. German sailors dive after him but cannot locate him in the turbulent water and poor visibility. His body is not recovered. Of the 38 men rescued, 6 die aboard Hipper within the first hour from hypothermia, internal injuries, or drowning complications despite medical intervention. Glowworm's captain, Lieutenant Commander Gerard Roope, is seen in the water by multiple witnesses. He is observed attempting to swim toward the rescue boats but loses strength and sinks before he can be reached. German crewmen later testify that he appeared exhausted and may have been injured during the collision. His body is not recovered. Aboard Hipper, the rescued men are taken below. Medical staff treat blast injuries, burns, hypothermia, and near drowning. German physicians work alongside British survivors who have medical training. Survivors' accounts, recorded days later in German POW camps, describe professional handling. Warm clothing provided, brandy issued, injuries treated without delay. The German crew operates according to standing naval procedure. Enemy sailors in distress are combatants no longer and are afforded the protections due to prisoners under international law. The scene below decks on Hipper presents a contrast of simultaneous operations. In the forward compartments, damage control teams are shoring bulkheads, running emergency pumps, and calculating flooding rates. In the sick bay, medical personnel are treating both British prisoners and German crew injured by secondary blast effects from the collision. In the troop quarters, infantry assigned for the Trondheim landing are being reorganized after their temporary evacuation from flooded sections. The cruiser is simultaneously a rescue ship, a damage control exercise, and a troop transport on a deadline. The damage assessment aboard Hipper is complete by 1100 hours. Flooding in the starboard forward compartments is under control. Pumps are holding water levels steady. Temporary shoring has been installed across the breached frames. Speed is restored to 20 knots, enough to reach Trondheim but insufficient for sustained combat operations. The list is corrected by counterflooding. Structural integrity surveys reveal cracked framing across a 6-meter section. Permanent repairs will require dockyard facilities and an estimated 3 weeks of work. The forward engine room remains operational, but is operating at reduced capacity to avoid stressing damaged mounts and piping. The cruiser can make port, but she cannot fight. Captain Heye files his preliminary report at 1200 hours. The encounter is described in precise terms. Time, position, sequence of events, ammunition expended, 48 rounds of 203mm and approximately 200 rounds of secondary battery. Damage sustained, casualties, none on the German side, and prisoners taken. A separate paragraph addresses the conduct of the British captain. The language is formal but explicit. Roope handled his ship with determination and courage, pressing the attack to the point of self-sacrifice. The report recommends that this conduct be noted and, if appropriate to enemy procedures, recognized. The notation is unusual in German naval practice but not unprecedented. It will later prove decisive. April 10 to 12, 1940. The operational timeline for Group 1 is now fractured. Hipper reaches Trondheim but cannot participate in subsequent fleet actions. The landings proceed, but naval gunfire support is reduced. German planning had assumed all heavy units would be available for follow-on operations. The loss of one cruiser to combat damage creates a gap that cannot be filled. Replacement units are committed from the Baltic, delaying other operations. The effect cascades. Schedules slip, escort formations are reorganized, and fuel allocation must be recalculated. In London, the loss of Glowworm is reported as missing, presumed sunk, based on failure to return to station and the cessation of wireless traffic. Details are absent. No British ships were close enough to witness the engagement. No reconnaissance aircraft observed the area. Weather has prevented aerial search. The Admiralty loss ledger is updated with minimal notation. 1 G-class destroyer, date and position approximate, cause unknown, presumed enemy action. German Naval Headquarters in Berlin receives Heye's full after-action report on April 11th. The document is filed according to standard procedure. Engagement summaries are retained for tactical analysis. Damage reports are forwarded to shipyard planning, and commendations are noted in personnel records. The paragraph concerning the British captain's conduct is unusual enough to be flagged by staff officers. The recommendation is forwarded but takes no immediate action. Germany and Britain are at war, and formal recognition of enemy valor is not a priority for either propaganda or morale purposes. The financial ledger tells a different story. Repair estimates for Hipper are calculated in Reichsmarks and man-hours. 42,000 man-hours, 16,000 meters of welded plate, 600 tons of structural steel, and an estimated completion date of May 5, 1940. For 26 days, a modern heavy cruiser displacing 14,000 tons and representing an investment of 80 million Reichsmarks is unavailable for operations. The German naval order of battle, already thin compared to the Royal Navy, is reduced by 1 fleet unit at the beginning of a campaign where every major surface ship is required. Glowworm, displacing 1,345 tons and costing the British Treasury approximately £300,000, has imposed a disproportionate cost on the enemy. The ratio is stark. Less than 10% of Hipper's displacement inflicted enough damage to remove the cruiser from action for nearly a month. This is not romance. It is arithmetic. June to October, 1945. The collapse of Germany opens archives and releases personnel previously held under military security. Among the documents transferred to Allied custody are German naval war diaries, operational reports, and personnel files. The Kriegsmarine, more meticulous in its record-keeping than other branches of the Wehrmacht, has preserved comprehensive documentation of North Sea operations, including the engagement of April 8, 1940. A British naval intelligence team working in Wilhelmshaven locates the after-action report filed by Captain Heye. The document is translated, cross-referenced against British records, and forwarded to the Admiralty. It is the first detailed account of Glowworm's final action. The narrative it presents, detachment from the main force, pursuit of enemy destroyers, engagement with a heavy cruiser, torpedo attacks, ramming, and sinking, is consistent with the fragmentary wireless transmissions received in April 1940 but adds precision where British records contain only gaps. The commendation paragraph, describing Lieutenant Commander Roope's conduct, is noted. Heye's language is formal but unambiguous. The British captain pressed his attack despite overwhelming disadvantage, exhausted his torpedoes in close action, and ultimately chose to ram rather than withdraw. The report describes Roope as an opponent of exceptional courage and determination. The phrasing is significant. German naval tradition reserves such commendations for actions that meet the highest standards of professional seamanship and personal valor. British procedures for awards and decorations require corroboration. Witness statements from the 38 survivors of Glowworm are collected and compared. All confirm the sequence of events described in the German report. None can provide details of Roope's final moments. Most were below decks or occupied with damage control when the ramming occurred. The German testimony becomes the primary source for the conduct that leads to the award. In October 1945, the London Gazette publishes the citation for a posthumous Victoria Cross awarded to Lieutenant Commander Gerard Roope, Royal Navy. The citation cites outstanding courage and determination in pressing an attack against a superior enemy force. It is the only Victoria Cross of the Second World War awarded primarily on the basis of enemy testimony. The cross is presented to Roope's family. His name is inscribed on the Plymouth Naval Memorial, Panel 41, Column 3. The documentary record is now complete. British operational orders, German after-action reports, survivor testimony, and the formal recognition of courage by both sides. What began as a detached escort mission is concluded as a case study in close-quarters naval combat and the arithmetic of damage versus tonnage. 1940 to 1947. Tactical analyses of the Glowworm Hipper engagement appear in classified naval staff papers and later in published doctrinal reviews. The Royal Navy's Tactical School examines the action for lessons applicable to destroyer operations in restricted visibility. The key findings are documented. First, weather can compress engagement timelines to the point where doctrine cannot keep pace with decision requirements. Roope's choice to press the attack rather than withdraw was made inside a tactical window measured in minutes. Standard procedure called for evasion and reporting. The sea state made evasion uncertain and reporting impossible. Second, close-quarters action in heavy seas reduces the effectiveness of superior firepower. Hipper's 8-inch guns, dominant at 10,000 yards, struggled at 2,000 yards in a gale. Fire control solutions designed for long-range precision failed when the target was intermittently visible and constantly maneuvering inside minimum deflection ranges. Third, collision damage can exceed the effects of gunfire. Engineering analyses calculate the kinetic energy delivered by Glowworm's bow at 15 knots, approximately 11,000 km per second, concentrated on a contact area of less than 4 square meters. No armor scheme accounts for localized impact loads of this magnitude. The resulting structural damage, frames torn, plating ruptured, watertight integrity compromised, required repair facilities and timelines that exceeded battlefield damage control. German post-action reviews reach similar conclusions. Kriegsmarine tactical staff papers note that small units operating independently in poor visibility can impose disproportionate costs if they achieve surprise and close the range before the engagement can be stabilized. The recommendation is to increase destroyer screening distances and maintain active sonar watch even in conditions where submarine contact is unlikely. The encounter with Glowworm is cited as an example of tactical doctrine outpaced by circumstance. The broader balance of the Norwegian campaign, troop dispositions, logistics, air support, and strategic outcomes, remains unaffected by one destroyer's action. Germany occupies Norway. Britain withdraws. The campaign is judged a German strategic success and a British failure. Yet the operational ledger shows specific, measurable effects. One heavy cruiser delayed, one landing timeline disrupted, one set of escort formations reorganized, and one 3-week repair cycle imposed at a moment when every ship and every day counted. The numbers do not romanticize the action. They quantify it. Glowworm, displacing less than 10% of Hipper's tonnage, removed that cruiser from immediate operations and imposed costs far beyond her gun caliber. Position 59 degrees 30 minutes north, 5 degrees 12 minutes east. Depth, approximately 380 meters. The wreck of HMS Glowworm rests on the Norwegian continental slope, beyond recreational diving limits and outside commercial salvage consideration. The Admiralty has designated the site a war grave under the Protection of Military Remains Act of 1986. No dives are authorized. No recovery is planned. The hull and the men within remain where they fell. The last operational signal associated with Glowworm is a 3-word transmission logged at 0835 hours, April 8, 1940. Enemy cruiser sighted. Engaging the message was received by Scapa flow signal station with weak strength and atmospheric distortion. No acknowledgement was possible. The destroyer's wireless went silent 16 minutes later. The text requires no interpretation. It states cause, decision, and action. It is the final entry in the ship's operational history. The Victoria Cross awarded to Lieutenant Commander Roope is held by the Royal Naval Museum in Portsmouth. The medal is displayed alongside the citation, a photograph of the officer, and a brief summary of the engagement. Visitors are provided with the essential facts: date, location, tonnage disparity, weather conditions, sequence of action, and outcome. The display does not romanticize. It does not add dialogue or invent detail. It presents the documented record. A destroyer captain who chose to close the range, expended his torpedoes, and drove his ship into an enemy 10 times his size rather than accept defeat without imposing cost. The documentary chain is unbroken. British operational orders specified Glowworm's role as escort and screening. Weather reports documented conditions that separated her from the main force. German war diaries recorded the engagement from the opposing perspective. Survivor testimony confirmed the sequence. Engineering analyses quantified the damage. Award citations formalized the recognition. Historical research has added no new facts. The record was complete by 1946. In a battle measured between 2 wireless signals and 16 minutes of gunfire and steel, a destroyer altered the timeline of an invasion and entered the permanent ledger of naval history by fact alone. The numbers 1,345 tons against 14,000, 4 guns against 8, 145 men against 1,000, do not require embellishment. They state the asymmetry. The outcome: 1 cruiser damaged, 1 timetable delayed, 1 3-week repair imposed, states the effect. The recognition, a posthumous Victoria Cross substantiated by enemy testimony, states the judgment of both sides. The record is closed. The position is fixed. The transmission has ended. What is your perspective on this part of history? Share your thoughts in the comments, because every memory and reflection helps keep the past alive.